Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, consciousness, and what it all means. Peta Morton is joining me on the show today. Peta is a respected Reiki and mindfulness teacher, author, and speaker with a clientele around the world. She discovered Reiki relatively late in life as a result of a series of awakening and conscious expanding experiences that followed a life-threatening illness. Today, she provides a signpost which helps others to remember their true nature, to express their own unique voice with authenticity, and to reconnect with the powerful healer within. Her pioneering work, Imagining the Hidden Geometry of Reiki and the Geometry of Love, has received acclaim from thought leaders and scientific researchers around the world, and is helping to form a bridge between the worlds of science and spirituality. Her first book, Ancient Teachings for Modern Times, The Way to a Rich and Deeply Satisfying Life, is out now. Welcome, Peta.
Hi, Amy. Really nice to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
A few things to talk about before we get started with today's episode. If you have not subscribed to my newsletter yet, I have some exciting things coming out in the next weeks, months. Unclear how long it's going to take me to get it together, but there will be some stuff coming out and I don't want you to miss it. So head on over to dramyrobbins.com and subscribe to my newsletter. And I also wanted to tell everybody about an amazing opportunity with IANS. IANS is the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and their 2020 conference is online. This year's theme is Unlocking the Healing Wisdom of NDEs, and the program is packed to the brim with fantastic speakers and experts to guide newcomers and seasoned experiencers alike through the mysterious worlds of near-death experiences, spirits, and the afterlife. This conference, again, is online via Zoom, August 14th to 16th, and you can visit ians.org for more info. That is iands.org. And many of the speakers who have been on this show in the past are also members of IANS. It's an amazing organization that really promotes the work, so much of the work that I'm doing on this show in terms of bringing to light many people's spiritual experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. So head on over and check that out. And now to today's show. Thank you for being here. So I want to dig right in here. I want to talk first about the first chapter in your book, which was all about vibrations, because I've not really addressed this on the show, and I know it comes up for people a lot, but can you talk about what it means to be vibrational energy and kind of how we use that?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because this whole idea that, lots of scientists will say, yeah, everything that exists is almost all empty space, and it's just these tiny molecules and particles that are vibrating and the rest of it's space. I found that really, really hard to wrap my head around. I know what the scientists will say, but you might have a big suspension bridge made of steel. And it's like, how is that empty space? I found that really, really hard to get my head around. But, I had a really interesting conversation with a lady called Dr. Jude Currivan, and she was explaining to me that even the tiniest particles these days, the smallest levels you can get to, when you really look at the macro level, you get right down to that tiny level, it's just oscillations. There's really, even in the quarks and the leptons, she said the smaller you dig down, actually the less solidity you find. These things that appear solid, they're just waveforms, they're just fields of energy that are vibrating and oscillating. And I'm sat here on a chair and my feet are on the floor, and, if I stub my toe, it really hurts. So I found that really quite fascinating. And when I was researching my book, I found a lot of the old teachings would say that what we deem as being solid, the gross matter, the table and the body and this hard physical thing, it's not the only form of matter, and that you have different densities of this what I call Reiki, but, lots of people, you can call it what you want, but this spiritual substance that sort of holds everything together. You have this solid matter, and it just takes different forms. And sometimes it's very, very dense and contracted and compacted. And sometimes it has more space in it. And things like words and thoughts are just as much a part of the material world, but they're just more spacious. They're less tangible, but they everything vibrates. When we have a thought, it creates a frequency and it creates a vibration. When energy moves, you have a thought and it moves energy, and energy, as energy is moving, it creates a sensation. And of course, when we feel energy moving in our body, we say, oh, that's an emotion, but really all it is it's just a sensation of energy moving. It's just this energy moving in different ways, and contracting and expanding. And you have these processes that are just ongoing all the time, instigated by what we're thinking and what we're feeling. So yeah, that whole mind, body, thought, emotion dynamic has just fascinated me for the last 10 years, really.
And is the constriction of the energy really the more sort of negative vibration? Is it negative and positive vibrations, or negative and positive thoughts that lead to a lower frequency of vibration or less vibration? I'm not a scientist. You probably got that. You've got that. You've got that tag. But I don't see it. I really struggle with this whole negative, positive label. I see it more as push-pull energies, or more expansion and more contracted. To me, it's all just different forms of the same thing. It's the same thing expressing itself in different ways. And sometimes something that's contracted and feels uncomfortable is there for good reason. It's to sort of push you towards something else. It's when you put something under a lot of pressure and it's pushed down. We're feeling it at the moment with what's going on the planet. It puts us under a huge amount of pressure. But it's like pulling an elastic band back. When you pull it all the way back and it feels really tight and taut, and like life's tough and everything's under stress, everything under pressure. But the minute you release that, then you fly so much further forward. So even the times that we're under pressure, they serve a purpose. They serve to move us. Sometimes they serve to not move us in a certain direction. Sometimes it's just the body going, whoa, hang on, this isn't very good for me. You feel when something isn't comfortable. You feel when something isn't good for you. So sometimes it's designed to move you towards something that's better feeling. And sometimes it's because we grow from it. When you train a bonsai and you can shape it and you can mold it, and out of that confinement and that, being, shaping something and making it fit into it, disciplining it, and actually you can create something really beautiful from that. So I don't see it as negative. I really struggle with that whole negative, positive thing. So what are things to do if we aren't feeling particularly good in a moment to raise our vibrational energy?
I think the most important thing is start becoming aware, and start paying attention to what's going on, because most of the time we just react to triggers. We feel a sensation in our body and we react. And it might be something that's been caused by, your next door neighbor might have done something, and it straight away the mind starts going, oh, they're doing that thing again. And straight away you're not present. You're thinking about something that happened in the past, or a past experience, or even, way back, something that happened in childhood. Or it may be, a cosmic influence. There might be, at the moment we've got 4 comets in the sky and all sorts of alignments. And that often stirs up energy in the body. And what generally happens is we just react to it. So I think the very first thing is just to start becoming aware of what's going on and start watching it. So you can go, oh, I have this feeling in my body. It's like, yeah, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling irritated. And just to watch it, without judging it in any way, and just go, isn't that curious? I've got this, then you can start digging a bit deeper and start asking, well, what's that all about then? Because generally there's a belief that's attached to any emotion. Mm-hmm. But what I love to do, especially, I get in a funk like everybody else does. But what I really enjoy doing is I put a timer on my phone. So I have, I set the alarm so it goes off every hour or so. And I get a little ding. And I'll just stop and I go, what have I got in my head at the moment? What am I thinking about? And I'll go, I'm doing that thing again. But, just by becoming aware of what's going on and then you can detach from it, without cutting yourself off completely, but you can start observing what's going on and then you can choose whether you want to take action or not. But most of the time we're just oblivious to what's going on and we just have some sort of triggering sensation and we go, oh, I'm really angry or I'm really depressed. And it's like, well, no, actually, I've got a heavy energy. And so just being aware of what we're just being aware of what we're thinking. And I think it's the first step. And then, of course, once you're aware of what you're thinking, you asked about raising your vibration, gratitude. And when I say gratitude, I don't just mean, thank you for the food we've got on the plate. For me, it's really appreciating what's here, despite what it might be that you want to have in your life that hasn't arrived yet. I've got a lot of fire signs and, very impatient. I want everything now, if not yesterday. And actually taking time to appreciate what is actually here right now while I'm waiting for the next thing to show up. What is around me right now, and just really paying attention. So instead of just, eating a bar of chocolate and not even noticing it go down, actually stopping and tasting and thinking, oh, what's the texture like? And what does it taste like? What can I smell? She was a client and a student and became a really good friend. And she died of cancer a couple of years back. And she taught me so much about savoring every last drop of life. And I remember she was lying in bed and she couldn't lift her head up on her own. She was, really in the last few days. And yet still she saw a ray of sunlight coming through the window, and she could see the leaves of the trees, and that's all. It was a really dismal little room she was in as well, and yet she was still inspired by that light. Just by being able to watch the patterns on the wall, she found something to appreciate right up until the last minute, and that really, really, really stuck with me. When you see a lot of the people that I see in that come to me for my work, often they have everything going for them. They arrive in their flashy new car and, they're off on a holiday, and they'll be moaning about the fact they've had to change the tyre and I've got to spend time packing, I've got to pack and I've got to go on holiday and I have to travel to get to my holiday. And they just kind of miss the whole adventure of life.
So when you talked about in the book, Vibrational Energy, you also talked about this scale, the Bovis scale? Was that what it was called?
Yeah, I think, the Bovis Rate, yeah. It's the vibrational rate that dowsers tend to use. They can measure how fast. It's done intuitively, but they would use a little graph, and you can use a pendulum to measure the energetic rate of vibration. It's not a scientifically done thing. It's very much done intuitively with a pendulum or a rod.
Gotcha. And do you use that in your work?
I use it for demonstrations just because it's just mind-blowing for people. What I love to do is to measure somebody's rate of vibration at a certain time, and then what we'll do is we'll go outside and play for 10 minutes, like kids. So we'll go out and we'll throw a ball around, or we'll play leapfrog, or, all these things, or hide and seek, do something really silly. And within 10 or 15 minutes, we come back in and I'll measure again. And what you'll find is their energy rate is literally like doubled, if not tripled, in 10 minutes just by playing. And it could be anything, you could do it in a conference room and you'll measure it and then you'll throw a ball around between people in the audience, or dancing, but you'll find, and I just think it's so important because it teaches people that actually play and allowing us, we don't allow us, we're so busy working and being very strict with ourselves. So actually playing with, giving ourselves permission to play and have fun, it changes so much. Especially, I see a lot of businessmen as well, and, they're brilliantly successful careers, but they're so blocked in their sacral chakra, because, the lower back and things, because they have to. Everything's in the, I must, I should, I must be doing this. And I said, when was the last time you just went out and had, you just played, you did some art, or you went dancing? And they go, oh, I don't do that, I don't have time to do that.
So it's really play. It could be play in a, how we think typically, like childlike sense, but that free form, lack of structure. I did this last week with a friend. We were having drinks, and I love to dance. And so they turned on the music, and she and I started dancing, just like totally having the best time. And the entire rest of the night, I felt so much better. Not that I even felt bad before, but you just feel how it does lift.
Yeah, I do it a lot, actually. Because I've always been quite prone to depression. It's one of those things I struggled with a lot when I was younger, which is why this has helped me so much. And this sort of getting those negative thought patterns, I'm negative, but, getting those thought patterns, I'm very, very good at poor meing. And, very, very quick to concentrate on what's going wrong with my life. And when I find myself getting stuck like that, I will stick the music up, and I'll be on my own, and I'll just put it doesn't matter what it is. Yesterday it was reggae, but, I'll stick a bit of disco on. I'll be bopping around the kitchen, and it changes. Something shifts. So, yeah, or it just might be just going out, take the dog out for a walk and sit in nature, and any of those things. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting when you're talking about dowsing, I do something at conferences as well, and you can measure the size of somebody's energetic field with your rod. So you can walk up to somebody and you'll see the size of their aura, their bubble. And we play with that too. And so I'll get them to think of a time in their life they felt, maybe ashamed. And I say, don't worry, we won't stay there. But, when did you feel afraid, or think of your last tax bill, or, whatever, something the way you just felt a bit ick. And you see that bubble just shrinks right, within 2 or 3 centimeters from the body. And then when you think about something really uplifting, just think of a moment that you felt good, then it expands like enormous. It's just, it triples in size again. Which is why I always keep, I've got a photo of my kids just after my second daughter was born, and my eldest is sat there, and she's probably 2 or 3 at the time, and she's looking at her tiny little fingers for her little sister. And every time I look at that photo, I just get that, it's giving me goosebumps again, it just gives me that, and then everything opens up and feels lighter, and then the energy flows.
And that's the expansion that you're talking about when you're talking about vibrational energy.
Yeah, that just everything in life, when you look at sound, contraction, and when energy moves, it does that wom, 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 wom thing, and it's contracting and expanding all the time.
So can you speak a little bit to, in the book, some of the ancient teachings and how we're adapting them, and in a more Western way, but also does that dilute them at all, or do they lose their potency when we adapt sort of these ancient ways of doing things? When I wrote the book, I wanted to do something that just opened. I wanted to do something that just opened a door, and that doesn't mean to say you can't delve more deeply. As the longer I study Reiki, the deeper you go, and the more profound it gets. These people who say, "Oh, you just do Reiki," really haven't understood Reiki. The deeper you go with your practices. But that doesn't mean to say, I think there's room for both. I think you can have something that's really, it literally is just opening a door. But once that door's open a chink, then there's always more to discover. And so do I think it dilutes them? I think some practices do. Yeah, I think you can water things down. And I think it's important to stay as close as you can to the tradition. But what I found was that no matter which practices I looked at, it doesn't matter which culture they came from, they were all basically coming back to the same
the same very, very basic principles. And actually, they're very easy to apply right the way through your life. And it doesn't matter whether it was Sufi or whether it was from, Taoist, or it was Buddhist, Christian. I really struggle with dogma and, the whole religious side of things. I found that really challenging. So I was quite confronted by that to start with when I started doing the research. I really struggled with that. But actually, they all say the same thing, and the teachings that they share are actually so valuable, and so simple, not easy.
What do you feel like are the main principles, like the big ones?
The big ones, I think, really becoming aware of your thought, of your speech, the power of sound. The power of the word, the spoken word, is vital. Staying in the present moment, that's a teaching that comes across cultures. So, being present, being aware, not getting lost in what's happened in the past, or worrying about, whether you're going to pay the bills tomorrow, or what's going to happen next week when you you give a presentation at work. What are people going to think of me? Really coming back to the present, remembering to take action. It's all well and good. We're in a body on this planet for a reason. It's not enough just to be. Meditation is wonderful, and imagination and creativity and all those things that, they're brilliant. But it's about bringing the two things together. Not losing sight of the fact that, wow, we have this amazing body. Putting the two things together and taking action, actually doing something with that. So, you being inspired, letting yourself be inspired by this part of yourself that has a higher perspective, if you like, that non-conscious part. And not getting bogged down in what's in it for me, just bearing in mind that we're part of a greater network of things. So I think I certainly had lost a lot of sight of that. Everything was about, what am I going to get out of this situation? And I think increasingly we really need to be moving towards, what can I contribute? What can I put in? And just trusting, as you try this stuff, as you trust that when you put in, you receive far more back, actually. Every time you give. I think I did a Deepak Chopra. There was a 21-day Deepak Chopra Law of Abundance thing doing the rounds recently. And I love this. He said every time you give something, you get 7 times as much comes back to you. So every time I'm paying my bills, it's like every time I'm in the supermarket, it's like, oh, look. Normally I'd be going, oh my God, I was just, how much this shop's gone up over the last couple of years, and this time it's like, oh yeah, I'm paying this bill, but 7 times as much is going to come back to me. So, but they're very simple principles. It's all about, and also feeling from the heart. How does this feel to me? Instead of trying to do everything with your mind, trying to do it with logic, just letting go of that and really seeing how things feel in your body. Do I feel lighter or do I feel heavier?
So it's really this conscious attunement.
Yeah, it really is. It's about putting the two things together. There's a place for your mind and logic. I'm not dissing that at all. It's important, but I'm much more about feeling. Intuiting my way through life. It never lets me down when I listen to it. I pay attention, and every time I look back at anything that ever went catastrophically wrong in my life, there was always a moment where a part of me went, this is a really bad idea. And then my mind would wrestle it to the ground and say, oh yeah, but he'll be a really nice guy and he'll really look after you. And then you find you've been, 6 months down the line, he's gone off and, every time it's gone wrong, it's because I haven't paid attention to what my gut was telling me.
Mm-hmm. So I know we're not here to talk about the geometry of love, but I was certainly curious about that because as you wrote in the book about the shapes of the world and the way that things take shape, particularly in a sphere, that was fascinating to me. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just been a real journey for me. This is going back about 10 years ago. I had a series of spontaneous I don't know what you'd call them, visions and, expanded consciousness states. And I saw all sorts of, I saw this big, this image of me, and I was in a conference center. I was an estate agent at the time, but I was in a conference center, and I had this big white screen behind me, and somebody on a massage table. And I'm passing my hand over them on a massage table. And as I'm passing my hand over, I could see all these geometric patterns on the screen behind me. And they were moving in real time. And I had no idea what that related to. But I knew it had something to do with our chakras and our meridians and our emotional state. And I was explaining something about DNA, and it just it made no sense to me at all. And today, that's actually what I do. I go to conferences and I talk about this stuff. And basically, what I'd seen cymatics patterns. And cymatics, it's the study of sound and vibration made visible. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. In the old days, they used to do it with sand on a Chladni plate, and they would bow the Chladni plate, and it makes all these geometric patterns. But today you can do it literally just with you can put a little dish of water on a speaker if you want. I was lucky. John Stewart Reed, he's a leading cymatics expert, he really gave me a leg up with this. But what happens if you play a frequency or you make noise, it basically it makes these geometric patterns start to form on the membrane of the water. And of course, we don't know very much about water. There's so much about water that we just have no idea about. Just that in itself fascinated me, because it's like, oh, that's what I saw in this vision. It's like, wow. It's like that. So I became interested in cymatics. But around the same time, I started working at distance and doing Skype sessions, Skype Reiki sessions. And what was really, really interesting there is every time, like, we could have a perfectly normal conversation with somebody, no interference, no, just a nice, clear, like we're speaking now. And yet the minute we started to share Reiki, or, it doesn't have to be Reiki, it could be any, there's a GP who does prayer healing, faith healing, Isaac Nemmer. And I've seen he's had a similar phenomenon on his videos. But somehow Skype amplifies what I think is a sound that's already present, but it's just not within our field of hearing. And somehow it amplifies it. So what I would find is that as soon as I start sharing Reiki, there's all these sounds that would come out of my speakers. So you get vroom, vroom, vroom. And different sounds for different emotional states or different clients. Some days it would be beep, 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 very fast, very high frequent, like you get it. So different, really different sounds for different conditions. And I think I'm starting to make the links with what's going on astrologically as well in people's natal charts. I'm starting to see themes, but it's early days, But the computer will pick up all sorts of things that you might be aware of psychically and intuitively. And the computer's just, sometimes you'll see colors forming in the, you can't see it, but you can see on the screen, you see flashing lights in the room. And the computer picks up something that we might catch psychically, but it somehow amplifies it. So what I started doing is we would take the sounds from these sessions and we'd make an MP3 or an MP4 recording, and you stick the aux lead in, and the vibrations from these sessions would make a geometry on the water. They move the water, and so you put a light on them, you can film them, and you can see what's going on. And it's just fascinating. When people are
and what do you feel like that means?
Well, when people are in a really good feeling place, what usually happens is, and they're healthy and they're well, what usually happens is it forms a very coherent, structured geometry, very beautiful. Like beautiful, I don't know if you've ever seen the work of Masaru Emoto, who did the work on ice crystals. Basically what happens is when we're in a good feeling, healthy, happy place, what usually tends to happen is we have this beautiful structured water that the geometry that forms is It's beautiful, makes these amazingly very, very intricate patterns. And yet, if you were to do a session with somebody who was, had post-traumatic stress disorder, or somebody who had cancer, quite often what happens is the sound becomes very staticky. You get this almost like you have a radio that's stuck between frequencies. It's not one thing or another. I'm seeing a lot of that at the moment, actually. But when you run those sounds through the cymatics pan, it really struggles to form a coherent geometry. It's very disordered, lots of holes, or it's over amplified. Sometimes people are very stressy, and it's like the emotions it's like big stereo speakers. And what happens if you put the sound up too loud when you're doing cymatics work is all the water literally just jumps out of the pan. It's like gets so excited that it doesn't form any shape.
So it's so interesting to think about what that would mean, right, for the mind-body connection and the chaos. Like if we feel chaotic in our bodies, how that's then reflected so clearly in the water, and how when we're organized, because nature organizes itself, right?
Yeah.
Like in these types of shapes, even though, I remember, I think I was at the museum once and we were exploring like beehives and the shapes of the perfection of the shapes of the way nature organizes itself. And it's like nature prefers organization. Do we also prefer sort of that organization versus the chaos, that sometimes swirls within us?
Yeah, and I think sometimes we have to go to that chaotic place for new things to form, though. That sometimes
to reorganize.
There's a place for disintegration and chaos. And actually, even within that, there's, very quickly new shapes will form. Lots of vortices. You'll see that whole yin-yang, the toroidal structures, they form all the time, this vortex energy at every scale. And, often they just sort of they go out into different fractal forms as well. So you'll have one vortex and then another one that forms out it's just fascinating. Just thinking that what's going on in that dish is probably what's going on inside my body, within the cells. And there's a guy who I love to follow on Facebook. He's crazy experiments. He's every day he's doing something new. But he does this thing called bubble cymatics. So what he's done is we have this cymatics pan, and he's literally just got kids bubble bath and the stuff you blow for the kids, and he's put his name's David Shearmeyer, and he blows a bubble over the pan and then shines the light through it. And so what happens in that case is you can actually see these patterns in 3D. So instead of just seeing this flat version, now you're actually seeing this intricate geometry, but it's moving out in all senses. And I kind of think that's what we're swimming in. It's around us all the time in the air that we're breathing, and the ionosphere. It's constantly moving. So, and I suspect that's what happens. When you walk into a room and you pick up an atmosphere, that somebody's had a fight 2 minutes before you came in. You feel it. I actually think what we're doing is we're interpreting those geometric structures that aren't visible, but they're there. And You're feeling whether it's disordered or whether it's coherent. And what did Jude say? We were like routers. Routers, you call them routers? Routers that you might a router for the Wi-Fi.
Computers.
Yeah, we're just constantly interpreting packets of data.
Well, this was so interesting to talk about it in this way. And I'm really grateful for your time today. If people are interested in this work, where can they find you? How do they find your book? How do they find out about what you're doing?
Yeah, I have a website. It's with my name, petamorton.com. So it's PETA. morton.com, and you'll find the books any good bookshop. You find it online at Amazon, and all the independents have it as well, but you can also find it on my website, and courses, and anything that's coming up, all sorts of new stuff going on as well. So
well, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me on here. It's I love talking about this stuff.
It's I don't blame you. It's so interesting. I love listening and learning from you. So thank you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.